Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time you are watching the program, good day. My name is Eden Corbin. You are on Nation Watch, powered by the People's National Congress Reform. The day is September 28th, 2025, and we are here in Georgetown. I have a very special guest with me, as always, a very special young lady. Her name is Juretha Fernandes. She holds a degree and a master's degree. Probably she's going to tell us about those interesting qualifications she has. She's a mother of three. She's happily married, as she told me earlier, and she is no stranger to most of us. She is a political powerhouse. She has been a part of politics for over 15 years, and we are going to have a great discussion this afternoon. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm great, Eden. It's good to be here on Nation Watch again. I love to have these discussions. I think it is very fruitful for us to have conversations. And thank you for inviting us into your living room, into your home,
Yes,
as we
yes.
proceed with this discussion today.
Awesome. So, as we discussed earlier, we're going to be looking at the new political landscape. I think it's a very important aspect that we have not really looked at. Persons would have touched on it, but I think it would be better served for us to have a thorough discussion. And when I was thinking of the persons, I said, who better? Because I find that you will land smack in the center of the new political landscape, which I'm going to explain. So as we notice, from the, let's say, the late 90s all the way to today's date, a new electorate has been formed, and there's no doubt about it. It's the young persons who would be from approximately, let's say, about 26, 27, all the way to the 18-year-olds, and the persons who are going to be 18 in 2030 for our next election, our next general and regional elections. And we've seen how this has been able to change the landscape of politics, whereby at one particular time we had persons who would have been in politics focusing on issues such as policy and more so race, because we've come from a racially dominant society. We have a ethnic multicultural society, and in that there's always been the little aspects of the race card, as people say. And we see now that has shifted, that persons are now moving away from the race politics and even the policy politics and performance, and they're more focused on the incentive politics and what can I gain for myself, or what benefits do I have. And I would like to know, as at the beginning, what are your thoughts on that, what I just explained? The old electorate is the more experienced electorate that would have been around from since 1966 in independence, all the way to probably, let's say, the late 90s, and then the new electorate that has come out now in the 1990s, the late 1990s to 2025. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think when it comes to experience, the first thing I want to say is that each one of the demographic have their own experience. So it's not a case as though you're saying that the persons that are older necessarily have a better experience. What we are seeing right about now is the advent of technology and the use of technology in crafting and basically modeling the decisions that persons make in their own lives. And as we looked at even the election results for this election, you will see that playing a very pivotal role. A lot of times you will see us moving away right now for and all of that. A lot of young people you would go and ask, just find a random group in and ask them about prior 1990s and stuff like that. And that's not something that would necessarily pique their interest because we are living in a technological age, like I just said, and it is rapid. Information is going rapidly. You from one thing to the next, something is sensationalized within 2 3 days, and then you're on to the next hot topic. And young people really don't show if I dare say, the inclination to really ponder on the historical aspect of it that much. And I think we all have our part to play in making sure that people understand, because it's important that we understand where we came from to where we are today. You didn't touch on when it comes to ethnic voting and so on. And I think that we really have to look at the data to see how much we've actually moved away from that, because we haven't necessarily moved from that. The more youthful demographic probably have shown some bit of a shift in some regard, but it is playing a heavy role onto today when it comes to elections.
And I like that point you made in relation to the social media, because the reality is that we have a case whereby 80% of our population is now more focused on social media. They now is on the internet, and out of that 80, we have at least 60% of them that are on social media. So the old tradition have these professional journalists, you understand, persons who would have been in the profession for long, persons who would have been educated or whatever way they would have come along to the profession. And now we have this new social media generation, social media world where we're living in, where we have these new emerging figures, persons who are not so traditional, but they are wielding a large influence to the point where you can have somebody like Dagi, who has an interview at the same time as a vice president of a country. Here you just have a social media entertainer, content creator, whatever you want to call them, and you have the vice president of the country on the other hand. They're both occupying the same platform, and at the same time, but the social media influencer such content creator is attracting a larger viewership at that particular time.
It's sensationalism.
Yeah.
Young people kind of gravitate towards that. It gives it's like a feel good. You watch something, you have a few laughs, and you go on to the next. And that's why TikTok is one of the platforms that you see is more used by young people, because it's fast. You just keep scrolling, and sometimes you say mindless scrolling. Just keep scrolling. You find a couple second entertainment here, a couple second entertainment there, but it's more sensationalizing every single thing. And as politicians, we've got to look at the good and bad of all of those facts right now, and we've got to mold ourselves and the way in which we approach this new demographic to make sure that they hear our messaging, because if they're not too inclined to sit down and listen to a 1 hour interview, we've got to cut it up in bite sizes.
Yeah,
even this
correct.
interview, we may have to just cut it up in bite size.
And get the good points.
Yes.
But let me ask you. We have seen the results of this last election, and are some new faces on the scene. A new party that was able to do, what some persons would consider to be decent for a first time round in these particular settings. Do you think that the social media and the internet had any part to play in those results that we saw in the last election?
And social media had every part to play, not any part to play. Social media played every part in that aspect, because, and again, it's like what I said earlier, it's a lot of more so persons just going for a feel good story. If you see somebody go and they do something that you deem to be a positive thing, then you say, oh, well, I've probably, you get that feel good about it. You scroll social media, you feel good, and you say, oh, that person did something good, and then you think that if you can hitch your wagon to them, and hopefully that they can create policies that is going to reflect that at a larger level. But hence we are here today.
Correct.
So that is to be tested, I would dare say, because if it was like an experiment in that regard by the electorate, then we will have to see how it pans out over the course of time to see if the social media hype actually can translate itself into policy formulation.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I like the way that you put that across, because that is another issue that we have, Now that we have the social media, as you said, there is a good and there's a bad to it. But when we are now using these platforms, what we have to look at is how do we now translate the viewership that we have, the clicks that we have, the interactions or the analytics, as the professionals would say. How do we now translate that into the change that we want to see, more or less, as the party right now, the coalition, the APNU coalition? What are your thoughts on how we can now try to move our social media presence into an actual tool that we can use to be able to support and to help our base?
It's a balance. I think a balance is definitely needed. One of the things that persons, politicians must never neglect is actually being on the ground and knocking on doors. Nothing beats that. You have to do it. Even in the more technologically advanced countries, you would see during the campaign, they would have door to door. You knock on the doors and make sure persons feel heard, they're seen. And that will never be something that could be replaced by social media. So that's first acknowledgement we need. But when it comes to social media, it is important you amplify what you do by letting persons see. And I think it's a delicate balance, even for persons like myself, that I would go out there and if I know somebody is in need of something, I would go and render that assistance. But I don't necessarily like to showcase when you are helping somebody.
Correct.
So it's almost as when you don't showcase that, the age of technology that you're in right now is as though you're doing nothing.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
correct,
So
correct.
it's a balance. Like, how do you balance your moral compass
Correct.
against publicizing everything that is done? The publicity is necessary for politics, but then I do have this strong moral compass that says not because somebody is poor you have to go publicize
Yeah.
some bit of assistance you're
I
giving to
mean,
them.
the political actors, as they may, we have lives as well. So,
Yeah.
sometimes you want to carve out a space for yourself, but I guess, you're here to serve. So sometimes, as you said,
Yeah.
it comes back down to being able to strike that balance between, your personal and your professional. But shifting gears just slightly, we know that one of the issues that we have in our country is the employment of persons and the unemployment rate as we have it. We have issues of poverty, things that we campaign excessively on. The fact that we see that the country has been growing in the economy in certain particular areas, and we don't see that economic growth that we're seeing in numbers. We don't see it in our livelihood. The cost of food, which is a basic necessity in these times, is extremely high. We pay, a lot of money for the fancy foods and these things, or even the simple foods. The markets and these stuff, we know the cost of food is high, and that translates into the cost of living, where the average person is not seeing the growth that we have noted, or that we're making so much oil revenue, and we discovered another oil block today, and there's another excavation going on, and a lot of things that we're seeing happening in headlines and these
Yeah.
stuff. But when we go to the shops, when we go to the thing, when we go to the bank and we look at our paycheck and we think about four bills, at least three quarters of the money has disappeared. What do you think is the posture that we, as a part of the opposition, need to adopt in tackling those things more directly and decisively?
It has to be an information sharing process in which we have to go out there and educate the population on what's going on, but also when it comes to making sure that the services that is actually offered, that it reaches everybody. I think over time what we have seen is a failure of services to reach the people, and I believe this is our opportunity to go out there and make sure that every single thing that is available, we take it as our responsibility and our duty to make sure that it reaches our constituency, and the ordinary man, woman, and child is able to benefit from those things. The fact is, Eden, that the current administration does not look at making sure that the resources are distributed in an equitable manner in the country. and they do not go out there and craft policies that's going to make sure that the ordinary man and woman has a direct benefit. They put policies out there that is going to benefit the elites in society, and then they give you this hope that there's going to be some trickle down economics that we know internationally has been debunked at every single level by every real economist, if I dare say. So we have to make sure that we are the representatives that go out there, and we have to hold government accountable. And that is my role in the National Assembly, to make sure that you call them out and to propose policies and to propose changes even to the policies that they're operating under, to make sure that we go out there. I have no, based on my previous 5 years operating in Parliament with the PP administration, there is no hope that they're going to be willing to adopt any positive policy that is put there, but we have to go out there and do it nevertheless, because we've got to do it radically different than the last 5 years.
And let's just take a little pin and stick it right there for a second. You were in the last parliament that would have just been, what do they call, dissolved? I think they say parliament has been dissolved. You were in the last parliament that's just been dissolved. You're going to be a part of the new parliament that is going to be called, we hoping, not too long from now. There's this public perception that because we have 12 seats now, that we don't have much of a say, and these people got 36 seats and where they go into parliament for and these things. Based on your experience in parliament for the 5 years that you've had and your 15 years of experience as a politician, how would you be able to explain to the citizens and to the wider population to understand what is the role that you play, or yourself and your colleagues in the opposition, what is it that you play, and how do you go about ensuring the accountability and staying on them? Because some people just think that, you all sit down and you collect a thing and you go and you sit down in the MP's lounge and you get some nice food and you get your duty free. They're not aware of what MPs do. So as a past MP and a continuing MP in the new parliament, shed some light on that for us.
First of all, we don't get a thing, Funny. The funny thing is that somebody even asked me recently about the remuneration given to an MP, and when I told them what it is, they're like, "What? I thought the MP used to get a bag." And I said, "Well, welcome to opposition." Right? And so, welcome to the opposition, because it is, and persons need to understand that when we go out there, the representation that we make at the level of the National Assembly, it is done out of our own pockets. We have to go out there, reach our constituency, and we have to do it out of pocket. There is no bit of monies being allocated by government to the opposition MPs for them to go out there and do their work. So we do it off our own, because this is something that we're passionate about, and that's why I always say that politics is not for the faint of heart. You have to go out there, you have to be prepared to make sacrifices at the level of your family, your personal budget, and all of that, to go out there and make representation. But we do it because we have a passion for it, and we have a passion for representation for ordinary Guyanese. Our role is to keep the government accountable. Our role is to advance certain causes for the population, and that's what we have to continue to do. It's not just to go out there and to say, the government is corrupt here and there. It's also to be proposing policy that should be adopted and can be adopted by government, things that we see will be beneficial to our constituency and Guyana at large. So, and when you say 12 persons in the National Assembly, let me tell you something. If we had 10 persons in the National Assembly, it is not about the number of persons you have, but it's about the quality of the people that you are sending to the National Assembly and their ability to represent. A parliamentary seat does not define you as a person. You have to define that parliamentary seat and what it would represent. No matter how many seats you have, if you populate those seats with persons that are not competent, then you will not be making competent representation. I know the 12 seats that we have 12 competent individuals that is going to stand up from day one and represent very strongly to for Guyanese at the level of the National Assembly.
Lovely, lovely. And I mean, a little off script, are you excited by chance, to
It
head
is.
back into parliament?
It's not an excitement. It's a sense of responsibility, a sense of purpose. You go out there and you continue to make the representation for the people that you have met along the way. And like I told somebody very recently, being on the campaign, it gives you a sense of purpose. You are get a reminder that these are the people that I'm doing this for, and that is what I am ready to do. It's not excitement, but it is definitely you feel that responsibility that you shoulder, and you are ready to go out there to get the work done.
Wow, I mean, that there's nothing for me to say further to that. I think you would have articulated that well, and we are excited. You know, we are going to be there supporting and cheering you on from the sidelines. So we're excited for you to get back out there and get the work done. Now, we know that corruption is a big white elephant or a big eyesore in our society. We just spoke about the fact that, you know, we see some economic growth in particular areas, but we're not seeing that trickle down. And on the other hand, now we have a developing country with the fastest growing economy, and we are still very high up in the corruption index. As a nation, I think it is about 92 out of 180 countries, and we're at 92. We're a developing state. We have what is dubbed the fastest growing economy. We're an oil state as well, and our corruption does not seem to, you know, it seems to be something that is given lip service. There are some, you know, and I share the view, I don't hold it wholeheartedly, but I share the view that the corruption was one of the key issues with this last electoral process and campaigning. And to me, you could see it, you know, there was a clear, I mean, I even heard it was mentioned by our comrade leader, there was a clear disparity in the spending power and the ability to dominate those same platforms that we mentioned, which play now a critical role in reaching the base. And we have entities and individuals and parties with interests who are now just perpetuating particular things. We see things happen on social media, and certain people get arrested immediately while a person is granted bail or almost immediately in particular instances. And we see this is creating a loss in trust in traditional political avenues, which I would say has given the room now for these new actors to wiggle their way into the political scene. What are your thoughts on the mistrust? And secondly, how do you see us dealing and healing from all of the mistrust that has happened? Because while we may not have been the perpetrators, we suffered from that mistrust in one way or the other. So how do we now reconcile with our base, and what do we do moving forward?
You know, if I could just pedal back a little bit on what you started by saying, when you talk about corruption, we have got to have a frank conversation as a country when it comes to corruption. And one of the things that I've learned over the last months in the campaign is that we have a demographic that doesn't really see corruption as such a big deal. And it is something that we have got to have a really serious conversation about. I have seen and heard persons said, you know, yes, this person is corrupt, but you know, everybody got make a dollar, right? And yes, this person is corrupt, but at least they're helping to do something positive. So there's a large conversation that needs to be had as to how this new voting demographic that we started this conversation on, how they view corruption. Is it something that they see as a big game changer? Is it something that they don't really have it doesn't really play a determining factor role in their decision making when it comes to a vote? I say that to say that sometimes as politicians we would see something and we would want to call it out, But I think the manner in which we're doing it needs to be a little bit different, because going out there, because I have been guilty of going out there and just highlighting corruption. But I believe that the approach that's based on my own experience, the approach needs to be changed, because when you talk about corruption, you go to somebody and you said, oh, the government is corrupt. Like, what does it mean to them? What does it say for them as an individual? And I think that's the way we need to change the conversation, and we need to be more explanatory to say this is how it affects you as a person. This is how the corruption is affecting you. And one of the things that corruption does is the higher a country is with corruption, the higher the poverty level is in that country, right? Because the more corrupt a country is, the more money is being sucked out of the system that should be channeled into the system to deal with things like the alleviation of poverty. So that's what people need to understand. When a country is corrupt, it leaves you on the breadline as an individual. So I think we need to move a little further and have the conversation more in depth. Not just to go out there and say, well, they're corrupt and they're ranking high on the corruption, because it really doesn't say much to the electorate when we say it like that. I mean, we had to learn that the hard way. We have to let persons understand that they are being deprived of resources themselves as a people, and that is why that is why we're highlighting this to them, and not just to highlight it.
Correct, correct, and I totally agree with that point that you're making. That corruption requires a frank discussion.
Yeah.
And there's this video with this African politician, and he said, it is only corruption when you don't benefit, and we saw that playing a really big role in the results of the last elections. We saw how that influenced persons who were willing to turn a blind eye, who were willing to look the other way to glaring issues of corruption, and even not if corruption, but things that signal that, hey, corruption, because you have indicators, you can see when things are going. There's a saying that where there's smoke, there is fire. And during the entire campaign season, and even prior to that, with relation to the government, we have seen a lot of issues, ministers being tied up in bad deals, permanent secretaries' phones being seized and being placed on OFAC lists,
Yeah.
We have cases of persons going in and being accused for heinous offenses, from rape, from theft, from malfeasance to conversion, and even in narcotics. You have persons who are implicated in narcotics or with persons in those particular fields, and you see almost nothing being done, and it's almost hushed, and it has become like a normal, to the point where persons be like, oh well, at least they do this for we, or oh, at least they come and they show us. And I think that as a society, we really need to do more, because this cannot be the status quo that we want to live in Guyana, because these things are not sustainable. Right now, internationally, we are in a very, I would say, precarious position in relation to, the aggression that we've been seeing recently coming out from Venezuela, with whom we've been in a territorial dispute for many years. And we cannot afford now to have a population that is not stabilized through the trust and the confidence, because look at those things that would have happened a few months ago, one after other, the domino effect of what mistrust in our society. You had the death of the young man from Linden, I think it's Keon Fudgenay, then you had Adriana Young, and then you had a series of events that really speak to, okay, that society, and it's not just the events that happened, it is how the society responded. We've gone back to riots, and we've gone back to going into the streets and burning tires, and individuals being charged for terrorism.
Yeah.
In a democracy where freedom of speech, the right to occupy space, the right to protest, and these things are values that are enshrined in our law, and they're only rooted out. Because how could somebody who just does a simple video saying, hey, come out, we're just going to take a stand, and that individual now is charged with terrorism, and sometimes these are the breadwinners. I have dealt with several matters where you had persons who were the breadwinner of their families being brought before the courts for some ridiculous charges, whether it's under the Cybercrime Act or the Criminal Offences Act, some things that they have not even been using as of recent. And I think the terrorism thing, ever since back to when they had the big issue on East Coast, with that riot on the East Coast a few years back, you've seen a different posture in the government of how they're now responding. And it came out, I think, coming down to the end of the elections in relation to the issue between the government and the Guyana Press Association, where particular individuals and interest holders had an issue with how the government, we even saw it in the report from the observers. It came out that they were concerned about how the media is being controlled and weaponized against there's no fair ground for you to come out and say that. I mean, and I know that was a mouthful, so I'm just going to pause and...
No, what you're saying, and I would invite you to. I would invite you after this program to go and do some research of your own, and you go and research the characteristics of a dictatorship governments, and it would be interesting what you would find, because if you go and you do the research, you will see that those things, freedom of speech, um, access to information, all of the lack of access to information, those things. If you go and you research the characteristics of a dictatorship government, you would understand what is playing out here in Guyana right now. But you went through a list of things that we're dealing with as a society, and I want to say this to the persons out there, Guyanese, the citizens of this country. A lot of times when people go to the polls, they make a decision that they deem to be more so something in their interest, more so economical interests at that time. And I want to say that a lot of other things were on that ballot. And that's what you've been talking about. When it comes to actually feeling safe in your own country, that was on the ballot as well. I noted even in Essequibo right now, I can give you an example there. You see the rice farmers out there, the struggle again. They were going through that prior to the elections. Myself went with a team that Mr. Norton had put together at the time, and we went up there, we listened to their concern, we presented solutions, and when it comes to the election, they went and they voted where they felt comfortable. And when I looked at that, it was a reminder, and I think it should be a reminder to them that their plight, their concerns, that was on the ballot. When they went to the polls on the 1st of September, that was on the ballot. So when you vote, you're not only voting for a few issues, you're voting for a government that is in charge of putting policy in place that is going to be taking care of all of these issues. So all of that was on the ballot. It was an issue before under the PP administration. They voted back in, resoundingly in Region 2, mind you, the same PP administration, and that was on the ballot, but they failed to realize that. So now they're back to that struggle again. And as the years go by, I can say it from now because I have been following politics for some time and I've been a part of national politics myself. And you would see it, persons you will see going up to Borbis, you will see issues with the fisher folks. You will see issues with the rice farmers. You will see a lot of issues when it comes to drainage and irrigation. You will hear countless issues of corruption and mismanagement of the resources of this country. But all of those things were on the ballot when they went to the polls on the 1st of September. But I think persons need to have a deeper sense of understanding as to what they're voting for, why they're voting, and how it affects them personally over the course of the 5 years that they elect a government to serve. And I think that is going to be more so of a changing point. So the responsibility is on our shoulders to make sure that we go out there and we educate people as to the number of things that are on the ballot when you head to the polls to vote in a government.
Correct. We have the local government elections rapidly approaching, and I know that we have already switched gears heading to that. And I think those are going to be some of the things that we're going to move going forward. We don't want to lose the momentum coming out of the last election, and I think so far we've been doing an excellent job as a team. Yeah, there, here and there little challenges that we face, but the challenges only expose how strong we are and resilient we are. And our supporters, we thank you for all, your commitment and your dedication. And we could only get better from here. And in closing, from what you just said there, I think it really brings back home the point we made earlier in relation to the new political landscape that we find ourselves in today, where there are these glaring issues that people live, and it's there, they have the opportunity, they have the choice and the ability to do something about it, and we find them conforming to these, very limited views. And I think moving forward, we want to continue to educate, to enlighten, and to provide new insights for the entire electorate, not just our supporters, so that persons can see that when you're supporting politics, it's not just about social media clicks, and it's not just about the hype, and it's not just about, oh, look, this, that, fancy stuff. It's about the structure, it's about the policy, it's about the mechanism that you're going to put forward to ensure that the issues are not just noted and identified, but there is things put in place to ensure that those are not issues that we're faced with. And in closing, I would like you to talk to our support base, our youth, and potential voters and persons who may be wanting to come over to our side. And I want you to give them a charge of sorts and tell them why you think that we are still in this race and we're still a force to be reckoned with.
Well, it's good that you asked that question, because I believe persons sometimes need a little bit of a reminder as to why we're doing this, and to the electorate out there, we're not just here because we just want to go out there and have arguments with the PPP administration. We are here because we stand solidly representing a cause, and that cause is you, the Guyanese people. We are here because we see it as our duty to make sure that you are not out there left alone in a society where persons are being muzzled. We are not just left there alone in a society in which corruption is deemed so glaring that you are not even given an opportunity to go out there and freely express yourself via social media, in which you have the weaponization of so many different things that is supposed to be protecting you. I want to say to the electorate out there, you have a commitment from us, you have a commitment from me, that you will not be fighting this alone. In the next 5 years, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be challenging, but we are going to be right there with you, fighting for your cause every step of the way. This is what we have signed up for. You have voted to put us there in the National Assembly, and the persons that are there are going to stand up and defend you every step of the way. This is not something you're going to be doing alone. We have local government elections coming up. We will be coming into your constituency, identifying individuals like myself, like Eden, that is willing to stand up to make representation for the people and for the communities in which they live. Because if we do not do it, then nobody is going to be doing it for us. We have future generations to come, and it is our duty to stand up for them. So let us go out there, expand in the numbers that we have, expand this army of representatives as we go forward, to make sure that we not only hold this government accountable while we're in opposition, but that we gear ourselves with the right equipment, the right individuals, so that the next elections to come, we will be right there, geared and ready, not only to represent you, but to take a government. We have this. This is your time, and we're going to make sure that you can benefit from the resources of this country as it's your right.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it there from yourself, the political powerhouse, none other than Juretha Fernandes. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here on Nation Watch. I always enjoy talking with you, and I'm happy that we were able to do this. I look forward to what we're going to be seeing from you, and I hope that when the MP life starts up, you have a little time to come and give us a little update. We know you're going to be fighting the enemy as it is, but we hope you could find some time in your busy schedule. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you so much for having us in your living room or wherever you're listening to us today.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Eden Corbin. I was with Juretha Fernandes, and this was Nation Watch. Don't forget to tune in with us next week, Sunday. We'll be bringing another great program. Thank you.